Hello, everyone. My name is Gitika Gorthy, and today I'm here with a very special guest, Ms. Forczyk. Ms. Forczyk is the owner of space consulting firm Astralytical, specializing in space science, industry, and policy, and offering space career coaching services. She is a NASA subject matter expert for planetary science missions. She has also written an amazing book, The Rise of the Space Age Millennials, The Space Aspirations of a Rising Generation, which everyone should definitely read. She is an inspirational woman that I, and I'm sure many other women, look up to, and I'm so glad to be able to conduct an interview with her today. Welcome, Ms. Forsyth. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to talk to me today.
It's a pleasure, and please call me Laura.
Thank you. Okay. So kind of before we get into understanding your journey, because you even started your own organization. So I'd like to know more about how is it what do you do in your typical day and how is it like? I know it's probably a little different with the whole virtual setting, but what do you do?
Well, the beauty of having my own company is that I don't have to limit myself to one area. I specialize in space industry, space policy, and space science, and space career coaching. So all of those areas mean that I have a diverse group of projects, a diverse group of clients, really a diverse workload from day to day, from week to week, to month. And I love that. That is something that really, truly appeals to me because I'm not a specialist. I'm a specialist in that I love space, but everything else, I love everything about space. So I don't want to limit myself. My background is in science and astrophysics and planetary science, but I never wanted to limit myself to just those areas because the most interesting things, in my opinion, are in the intersections between disciplines. And I absolutely love where one discipline connects to another and fascinating things happen. So for me, my projects revolve around two things. So one would be clients, whatever clients I have at the moment, whether they are individual clients or universities or companies or government agencies, whatever project that they need my help with is what I'm working for. And I get to pick and choose my clients. Mostly, I almost always accept. There are rare exceptions that I don't feel comfortable, but mostly I get to choose, which clients I work with, what projects I take on. And of course, I get to set my own timeline within the projects. If there's a deadline, I have to meet that. But within the projects, I get to choose what I'm working on first and where is most important priorities to be focusing on. And then the second part is internal projects to my company. In fact, we're about to release something in January that's been an internal project that we've been working on, analyzing various aspects of the space industry. Another internal project that's under Astralytical, although a bit separate, is working on a second book. So I've been interviewing flown astronauts and future private astronauts who are preparing to fly in the future about their spaceflight experiences, what surprised them about spaceflight, or how they're preparing for spaceflight, what they're doing to prepare themselves mentally, emotionally, physically for future flying. And so that's a book that's going to be published in about a year. And so I've been working on that as well in the background. And so there's a diversity of things depending on how much time is spent on clients versus how much time I get to spend on my own projects.
Yeah, wow, that sounds like a dream job. Honestly, I think it's amazing that you're starting another book, getting different perspectives, and also your daily job interacting with people and doing what you love. Just it sounds amazing. Um, could you tell us more about Astralytical? Like, how did you develop your own firm, and like what was your purpose behind developing it?
Yeah, I call myself an accidental entrepreneur because it was never my intent. I didn't go to school thinking I'd create my own company. But what happened is that I was working for a company that was a startup. And as startups go, some of them succeed and become the companies that we know today, and a lot of them fail. And I was working for a company that happened to go bankrupt, and they went bankrupt. And I was clearing out the office. I was at Kennedy Space Center in Florida, clearing out the office just a few weeks before giving birth to my first child. And so
Oh.
I had a choice then. Do I, take a few months off and then go search for a full-time job? What do I do? And I'm not the kind of person to just sit home and do nothing. So that wasn't something I could even physically do. I can't stop myself. So I just love what I do too much. So for a few months before the company went bankrupt, I saw it was coming, and I decided to get advice from other people about consulting. Back when I was in graduate school, I had actually done part-time consulting for a company that analyzed the space industry. And then I knew that I was good at it. I knew that I could do it, even though it wasn't my educational training. I knew that I could learn on the job, and I knew that I already had that experience. So I just got a bunch of opinions from people I respected, some mentors that I reached out to, people who had already done consulting or had already started their own companies. And I used that feedback to really help me to figure out if this was the right move for me. And I decided to try it part-time. That way, if it failed, I could always just quit and find a new job, find a full-time job when I felt that I was ready with my new baby. And so I started really slowly with my new baby. And I started, the company officially about almost 5 years ago now.
Oh,
And
wow.
then I after about 3 months, I got my first client. And I have to be honest, that first year was really, really hard because I didn't know
Yeah,
what
I
I was
bet.
doing, and I didn't know how to get clients, and I didn't know how to sell myself because my background is science, not business. So I had to learn a lot the hard way. And I'm still learning a lot the hard way, to be honest with you, 5 years in. But
We're always learning. We're all learning.
yeah, we're always learning. That's the great thing. But one of the things I had to relearn was how to value myself. Because when I was your age, you expect to take on part-time jobs at minimum wage. And then when you get to be, an undergraduate or graduate student, you expect to be paid a little bit more. But it's a difference when you then get your first full-time job, and that's a salaried position most likely. And then it's a totally different valuation when you are running your own company and you have to think about it in terms of the company and all the overhead of the company, and the amount of billable hours you have versus non-billable hours, and all of that factored into me undervaluing myself so much that first year that I almost quit after that first year because I had two really bad clients that did not, it was not a good situation. But after that first year, I decided I had two options. I either was going to quit my company, my new company, and find a job elsewhere, someone who would pay me a salary, or I would refocus my company and really focus on the things that I wanted to do, the clients I wanted to have, and the value that I was worth. And that second year ended up being so much better. I got better clients. I really, refocused to the company's priorities, and it worked out much better. So it's a learning experience, no matter what you're getting into, even if you've never done it before. You might learn the hard way, but that's okay because you're always learning.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear that. I feel like always startups are so tough, especially for people who have like no already lots of contacts or network in that area. It's really hard to just go in, especially if it's not your background either, and you're just kind of like, doing something. And I'm really glad to see that it worked out for you and you were able to find the purpose and the mission of your organization and your company. And I'm really glad to hear that. So what's the most exciting, I guess, project or research that you've worked on? It can be either in terms of your in your undergrad. I'm sure you've done a lot of research projects related to planetary science or related to your company. Was there any project or research you've done that you found really interesting?
Yeah, there's a lot that stands out. And one thing I was talking about this morning, which is fresh on my mind, I don't know if you've heard of the Zero G Corporation. Those vomit comets is what NASA called it. Parabolic flights where you climb and you dive, and you climb and you dive. And when you're climbing, you're feeling about twice the normal gravity of Earth. And then when you're diving, you're pretty much in free fall. So it's called parabolas. I mean, it's not exactly a parabola, but it's called that. And so what you do is you over and over again, you get about 25 seconds of microgravity time where you are in free fall in this airplane. And it literally is like microgravity, like just like in space you're free falling around a planet most likely, but in the plane you're just free falling for like 20-25 seconds. But in that time it's just amazing because no other place on Earth can you feel that lack of gravity. And that was something I got to do twice when I was a graduate student. I did two of those campaigns, one with NASA before they retired their airplane, and one with Zero G Corporation, which still runs their air flights. They do several a year, both for tourism purposes and for research purposes. And I was a graduate student studying how dust works on low gravity environments or in microgravity. And so the dust on planetary surfaces, even like the moon, asteroids, those kind of planetary surfaces, Mars, but also the moon, the ring formation or planetary formation in the early solar system. So we did a number of experiments, and my graduate advisor, he is still doing this kind of thing. We did a number of experiments in microgravity on the Zero G Corporation plane. It was just amazingly fun. So that is something something fresh on my mind that I highly recommend. I know that there are student programs where you can either apply as a group, as a team, or I think you can apply through a professor where you can propose a research project and get to fly one of those. And I highly recommend it. It's amazing. And full disclosure, I did get sick my second flight. Yeah, my second flight, because it was longer. So I managed to get myself a little sick. And so I would still do it again in a heartbeat. That was amazing. So that's the kind of stuff I worked in grad school. I did a trip down to a place called Meteor Crater, Arizona. It's the Barringer Crater. It's outside of Flagstaff, Arizona, and it's a beautiful meteor location where there was an impact, and they preserved it really well, where the public can go and sort of walk in this visitor complex around the meteor crater. But we went as a field geology group and did a camping trip where we camped there for 7 or 8 days, and we climbed down in the meteor crater. And I just happened to climb down. My group climbed down with an astronaut came with us, and they used to do astronaut training there. I don't think they still do, but they might. But it's just really cool, the differences that you get to see in connecting the fact that the planet that we're on, Earth, is in space and does get hit by these meteorites, and trying to understand how that compares to, let's say, impacts on the moon or impacts on other planets. And it's just really cool to make those connections, because we don't think about it. On Earth, a lot of our craters are covered up by plate tectonics or oceans or whatever it may be. And so we don't often think about that we are in space right now. We just don't think about it. But it's important to make that connection sometimes, to bring it back to Earth. And then there's just so many experiences like that.
Yeah, I love hearing it.
Yeah. 6 times. Twice was when I was an adult, actually. I got a NASA internship called NASA Academy. And they have several types of NASA academies now. Back when I was doing it, there was just one type of NASA Academy. And they sent us to space camp because we were located in Huntsville, Alabama. That was where our group was. And so I got to do space camp both as a kid and as an adult. So I went
awesome.
high school and as an undergraduate student. So that was a lot of fun. And just visiting the different NASA centers. I've done Johnson Space Center and JPL. I did a whole mock mission to the moon Ganymede when I was at JPL. Wow. So just like things like that, where you can really, these are things mostly outside of a normal school experience. You just have to find these opportunities, and some of them, they cost money, but that's where you can talk to your professors, your university. If you are in the United States, there's space grant offices in every state where they may be able to fund a little bit of money. So these experiences are something that you can seek out yourself. When I was your age, I was 16 when I actually sought out. It was my parents. They did it for me, but they contacted NASA Goddard Space Flight Center, which is the closest NASA center to where I grew up, outside of Philadelphia in Pennsylvania, and they arranged for me to go there for about 4 days to job shadow different scientists and engineers at Goddard. So when I was in high school is when I started doing these like extracurricular things that my parents helped me with initially. And then when I got to, when I got to college, I was able to try to figure out how to do it. But that's what I highly recommend for students, is to really volunteer, jump on. It could be independently, or it could be through a club, an organization, something that you volunteer for, or something that you're chosen for, you can apply for. So I definitely recommend doing that. There's so many amazing experiences.
I know those experiences, I feel, are so valuable for everyone. They're way more important than regular, just a physics class sitting in one. Being able to experience and do stuff and actually see things, I think is more valuable, teaches you a lot more. I myself got more into space after I went to a summer program at NASA Goddard Center in 7th grade. It was like a 1-week program called Sisters Program, and it was so cool because I was able to see all their facilities and talk to many scientists there, and like do little projects with a bunch of other people my age. So it was just really cool and fun, and that's how I really got into space. And my school didn't provide me a lot of rocketry or space education opportunities, so having those extracurriculars, which I 100% agree with, are so cool. And I actually this year applied for NASA internships, so we'll see, but it's just really fun. And I definitely agree with you. I actually have to try some of the stuff that you did. I've never actually seen any of the real crashes or anything, like the asteroids area sites where they've been landed. I've never seen any of that, so I have to definitely check that out. I think it'll be very cool. And yeah,
I'm
what you
really
were
glad that
saying.
you got a chance to go to Goddard and see that. And you're right, you can apply as a high school student to internships. I don't know if they did that when I was a high school student, because I love that. I love that they're engaging students at a younger age, which is just so valuable.
Yeah, definitely. I'm so glad. Yeah. I'm pretty sure they didn't have it back then, but seeing the interest and how people are actually willing, students are willing to put in that effort and time, they're actually passionate about it. I'm sure they would also love to spread space more. And to hear about your projects and research, I can't wait till I go to college and I have the, professors and facilities to be able to do that. I think it sounds cool. Did you always imagine yourself in the position you are in today? Like, or did you have some like twists and turns? I mean, no, everyone has twists and turns in their journey. And you definitely probably didn't imagine yourself as an entrepreneur. So I'm sure you did have twists, but did you kind of always have a vision when you were a little kid of what you wanted to be?
It it definitely wasn't a full vision back then. So I remember in third grade, I wanted to be an astronaut. I'd read about Apollo and I wrote a
Oh
short
yeah.
story about being an astronaut on the moon. And so ever since then, I wanted to be an astronaut, but I didn't really know how to get there. And so I was like, just kind of like figuring it out as you go, you know?
Yeah.
So when I was in high school is when I realized I loved physics. So for me, majoring in astrophysics was just obvious because I loved physics and I loved all the beautiful cosmological things that we have out there that we you have no idea where they come from or we barely understand where they come from. I just wanted to understand it all. I wanted to figure out what is this nebula? Where did this come, So that was what directed me to major in astrophysics. But then from there, it was like zigzag, zigzag, zigzag into figuring out, where is a better fit for me. So I loved astrophysics, but one thing I don't like is computer programming. So
Oh,
it was
yes,
like,
programming is not my
I
strong
to switch
suit.
over as a little more to something more hands-on, so I don't have to be sitting in front of a computer coding day and night. And so for me, it was then experimental planetary science, where I got to work in a lab with vacuum chambers and with, we call it regolith. It's the moon dirt and dust, and it wasn't real moon dirt and dust, but it was the
Yeah.
closest approximation that we could get based on Earth volcanics, and also some fake Mars dirt and fake asteroid dirt, that kind of stuff. We're getting my
Yeah.
hands dirty, and so zigzagging to there. But then through grad school, through my advisor, I realized I really liked the space industry and space policy. So then it was zigzagging a little bit more to that and figuring out how to get involved and even bridging into space law, even though I'm not a lawyer, and just trying to figure out, where can I get my hands into this really cool stuff? And you're right, I never planned to be my own boss in my own company, but I'm glad it worked out that way because it allowed me the freedom to figure out my path. Before I created my own company, I was still trying to figure it out, right? I knew I didn't want to be a professor. I knew that from the start. Most people who go to grad school for physics, they do want to have that kind of academic track where they become a professor. And I knew that wasn't my plan, but I had thought I wanted to be a research scientist for NASA. So that was my plan. So I was trying to figure out how to get that to happen, considering that NASA doesn't hire many civil servants. They mostly hire contractors, and it's really difficult sometimes to get in. But I was making it work. I was researching at Kennedy Space Center. I was doing all that I was supposed to do, but I could not get that postdoc position. But I accidentally found a full time job much quicker than I anticipated, working on space station research. And that space station research, it was a bridge to open my eyes to all the possibilities of research that can be done in low Earth orbit on the International Space Station, or even deploying things from the space stations, little satellites and that kind of stuff. And I mainly stuck to physics, but it was a really small team that I worked with. And so I had to help out with the life sciences too. So even though it wasn't in my plan, I'm really glad that that happened because it allowed me to open up my mind and open up all the possibilities that there are to what kind of research can be done on space station, what kind of research can be done on, in microgravity in general, the Earth observation pointing down, or even observatories pointing up, and all the different ways that you can work with governments and also work with commercial companies that are trying to commercialize LEO, Earth orbit in general. And I loved that I got a chance to open my eyes to all of that. And from there, I got chosen to run the office of an international startup company at Kennedy Space Center. So it was a company based in Switzerland, and they wanted me to run the office in Florida. Now, I didn't foresee that. I didn't know that I was going to be doing that, but it was an opportunity and it was great. And so I was really excited to take it on. And that was the business that didn't quite make it. But that opened me up still to working with government regulators and agencies, not just NASA, but, you got to factor in it's like aviation. So FAA, and on a smaller scale, the state organizations and the county organizations, and really all these different groups that work together to make these things safe, so that when you're launching things, you don't think about it, but there's so many different rules in place to make space flight safe as possible for the people on the ground, especially. And then, of course, if you're flying people in space, making it as safe as possible up there as well, within reason, because it's never 100% safe. So just even on that small team that I worked with for just about a year before that company went under really helped me. So it was not in my plan to do that, but I'm really glad I did. And so it's one of those things where you adjust based on, one, your own priorities and goals, and two, the opportunities that you find are presented to you. And sometimes it's making your own opportunities, making your own company, or in one case, I had 3 months between one graduate school and another graduate school. So I actually made my own job for 3 months. I pretended to be an engineer, a chemical engineer, working at Marshall Space Flight Center for 3 months. And so, in some cases, things like that just pop up out of nowhere. And sometimes it's opportunities that are put in front of you that you find, or someone presents to you, that you take advantage of.
Yeah, I think you perfectly captured how space is really beautiful because of the fact that there are so many sectors, or there's so many parts to it. It's not only where you have to be into just physics or just astronomy or just an engineer or some sort of chemist. Like, it's not just science and math. When you come into the space industry, it's everything from law to, marketing to writing, to art. And everything matters. And I think that your journey encapsulated a bunch of stuff together, and it shows you don't have to stay in one place. And the space industry is so big. So once you're into it and once you love it, there are multiple different jobs, multiple different areas of fields in space that you can go to. You can literally combine multiple interests, and boom, you have your own, you have your career, just like you. I feel like you do so many things of different fields, which makes your life entertaining, and as well keeps you informed of different fields and areas, which is, very nice to hear.
I wouldn't have it any other way. And I think that's one of the major misconceptions that students have, because teachers and professors and authority figures, they give this misperception. Sometimes they just don't know how broad it is, that space is not just for STEM majors. Space is for so many different majors. I literally talked to all kinds of majors, from philosophy to fashion,
Yeah.
all these different groups of people that need to come together to make the space sector what it is. And I really try to encourage that kind of thinking. Even people like me, or a scientist or engineers, people with typical quote unquote educations, I really help them figure out ways that they can branch out. I am not an artist, but I appreciate space art. I mean, I dabble here and there, but I make a point then to hire space artists, commission them to work on some of my projects, just because I know how valuable that is. Because when I'm a visual kind of person, to be able to see things like the background of my backdrop here, to see that tells a story. And so the artists can really tell stories. Journalists and writers tell stories in ways that scientists and engineers may not be able to do. So there's just so many different ways to get involved that are crucial.
Yeah, exactly.
Not like one is expendable and the other is more important. It's not. All of these areas just work together really well.
Yeah, being able to convert the numbers given from satellites and, making that into a diagram that's understandable to the general public could only be possible, I think, by artists and writers, not scientists who are already in this, very higher level thinking. It's really hard for them to piece things in a simple manner. And I feel like someone from the outside who is, part of the space industry, like an artist or writer, is actually really crucial to communication between the general public and, the professionals that are already in the industry. So I think that's definitely a great point that you make. And part of the series, I'm just trying to encourage people to, first of all, think broad-mindedly. Don't be like, you're not good enough because you're not a scientist or a mathematician. If you love space, there's definitely space for you. And my second point is, you don't have to follow any general stereotypes. You don't have to have 100% in physics class to be in space. You don't have to be a male to be in space. I feel like getting out of these certain boundaries we set ourselves as fake boundaries is really important, and to like break out of it. So what are your thoughts on like, I guess, spaces for all? Like, what advice do you have for people who might be like, I'm not sure if I'm good enough for space? Out of your own life story, what would you tell them?
Yeah, so that is one of my key focus areas, space for all. It's a motto that was introduced to me with a previous job, and I really appreciate it, and I try to integrate it into everything I do. And I see it in two ways. Space for all being that all of humanity has access to space. Whether or not that is, satellite data, or the ability to launch things, or there's just so many ways to access space that really changes our world. We take for granted the timing and navigation satellite system that we have with GPS, and how
Oh,
integral it
yeah.
is to our modern society. And that's what I mean with one area of space for all, is that everybody uses it. Everybody in modern society uses space. We just don't think about it for weather, or for emergency services, or so many different ways. So that's one area of space for all that I think is crucial, that everybody on the planet who wants to have access to space should be able to have access to space. And whether that is a smaller country working with other countries, whatever the case may be, I just think that is so important for lifting up entire populations. You can even talk about having, satellite internet and that kind of thing, which is a bit controversial at the moment. But, that kind of, area of opening up space access to people is very important. The other area of space for all, I think, is also having physical access, of being able to go into space, which we're not there yet, but I think that's the next step, right?
Yeah,
Because for so
commercial.
long, it was just a specific subset of humanity, of these fighter pilot white males in America, at least, or, very similar in the Soviet Union. And for too long, women were not allowed. Or, it's not that we weren't good enough, it's just we weren't allowed. We weren't chosen, we weren't, we were disqualified. And it's not just scientists and fighter pilots either. There's so many different other areas that could really benefit from, you know anybody. They should have sent a poet, is that line from Contact, Carl Sagan. And so those are the kinds of things to look at, is what types of people then should have access to space. And I think every type of person who wants to have access to space should be able to go up there, from all backgrounds. So, when you're thinking about diversity, you're thinking about not just gender diversity, but geographic diversity, and expertise diversity, and every kind of diversity that there is. I think space would benefit from, because we are, or will soon become, a multi-planet species, where we are not just working for our own planet and bettering our own lives on this planet, which is the primary purpose of space, but also branching outwards into the solar system, where we have the moon right there. We have Mars not too far away. It's going to take many decades, of course, but I think that's our future. And whoever wants to have access to that future, I think, should be allowed to have access. So that's the way I see space for all, is that right now, everybody should be able to get involved in whatever way they can. And in the near future, everybody should be able to have the ability to go into space, whether it's suborbital for just 5 minutes, or whether it's, a trip to the moon, whatever it is. I want to
Yeah.
go. I'll go suborbital. I'll go to Leo, wherever I want to go. So that's where I see things shifting, is that making sure that we understand that our human species shouldn't be limited to the surface of the planet. you know,
Yeah,
we have so
definitely.
much more. We have so much more. We are all part of this planetary system. And that is an area called the overview effect, that I think would be vital for people to experience, where astronauts who come back, they talk about how the perspective of being above the Earth changed them, because they saw how interconnected the planet is, and lack of boundaries, the fragile, thin atmosphere, and the more concern for environmentalism, or for international relations, or just making sure humanity knows that we're all interconnected. And it really puts petty problems aside when you're thinking as a planet as a whole. And so that's where I see space for all. I mean, it's the small steps of making sure everybody's included, no matter who they are, and it's the big steps of making sure that we as a human society can move beyond our one planet to not abandon Earth, not at all, to protect Earth, as we then move outward and make sure that our lives here on Earth are best. We'll maybe moving industry outward, or whatever the case may be, to make sure that we are doing the best for human society.
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly. Literally, that was like my whole mission statement. I think part of the reason I started this was just to show people that, you can be successful regardless of who you are, because you can be a part of space. Nothing should be able to stop you. There are so many opportunities in this industry. It's just a matter of taking advantage of it. And I definitely agree that giving opportunity is the most important aspect. Kids, when they're little, a lot of kids are always like, how did this planet form? Can I go beyond this planet? And I feel like every little kid is fascinated by space, but slowly the numbers of like interest go down and down. Maybe it's because they like a different industry, but a lot of them are also because they don't find that they can be a part of this industry in any way, or they think they're not good enough, or lack of opportunity. So I think, showing people like, what you're doing is amazing, and showing people that you can, be a part of space is really important. And I'm glad that you believe the exact same thing.
Yeah, and I'm sure that your generation is going to embrace that even more, because as we take for granted the technology that uses space, it's almost like it's already integrated within us. And you say that people move away from space because they don't think there's room for them. Well, industries are using space, and most people don't even realize how much industries are using space, where agriculture or real estate or tracking and logistics, all these different industries that are now using space more and more and more. And it's one of those things where it takes a mindset shift to recognize that space isn't just astronauts. Space is also being able to find out where your truck is going, or to track those ships or planes or whatever it is. Space is all these things to make sure that we can grow farms better. Space is so many different areas right now. Imagine where it's going to be in a couple of decades.
I can't even imagine. I know a lot of people don't even realize a lot of the technology on a day-to-day basis that we depend on, actually could only be possible through space technology that was invented, and how much space is integrated in their daily life more than they realize. So yeah, I think that's definitely a perfect statement. And to kind of wrap this kind of up, I'm really interested in always hearing what people are excited about for the future of the space industry, and kind of what makes them nervous. I'm kind of curious to, hear what your opinions are.
Well, I'm really excited, if you can't tell, about actually physically being able to go, because since third grade, I've wanted to go. And so I think within our lifetimes, definitely within your lifetime, I hope within my lifetime, normal people with enough savings will be able to fly up there. And I don't know what that is. I don't know what that threshold is, where it won't just be the absolutely rich and fabulously wealthy, but normalish people that can maybe afford to save up for a few years, be able to go fly even just suborbital space. But I think we're getting there. I think this next coming year or two, we'll see, probably next 2 or 3 years, we'll see operations in space tourism or private space flight, more so than we have in the early 2000s with the very quick trips that some private astronauts took to the space station. I think we're going to see more space stations. So I'm really excited about the expanding outward of commercial space. And some people call it the democratization of space. And it's not to say that governments are going to be left behind. Governments paved the way. So I'm really excited about the Artemis program that NASA has, about sending a woman to the moon. I want to go.
I'm so excited.
The first Artemis astronauts have already been chosen. It's not me, but I love to see that. I want to see that. I want to see us return that, because you and I were not alive for the Apollo program. So I want to have that, not just flags and footprints and then we go leave, but have it be a permanent presence where we are figuring out how to live on the moon, just like we figured out how to live in Antarctica. It's a tough existence, but we do it for the science, and we do it for the fact that it's kind of in our human nature to be able to figure out how to survive in these locations, and then hopefully onto Mars as well and elsewhere. So that's what I'm excited about. I'm nervous in that I think that we could do it carelessly. We're seeing right now, for example, I mentioned earlier the tension between satellite internet in low Earth orbit and the night sky being disrupted by satellite constellations, whether it's professional observatories or just amateur stargazers, that kind of tension. I think that we need to move forward in a way that is more deliberate. And we also have this problem where we're going to have a lot of satellites up there, a lot of active satellites and a lot of disactive satellites, whether they are defunct past their lifetime, or they're broken, or pieces fall off of things. So we're going to have a lot of space traffic management, space tracking problems that we need to be more deliberate about. And that also means not creating additional problems by blowing things up on purpose,
Oh, yeah.
which happens. And so we need to be much more deliberate about these kinds of things that we go into, more focus on international norms and making sure that we're not starting wars in space. And I don't mean like, science fiction type wars. I mean like jamming satellites, or again, blowing up things on purpose, making sure we don't do that, making sure we're talking to each other so we can be much more peaceful about our actions in space. And also the ethics involved. If we're having private companies transporting people to new worlds, what are the ethics involved in that. So making sure we're very, very deliberate about how we decide to move forward. We want to move forward with the best of humanity. And we're still going to be humans. We're still going to be imperfect and flawed as we move outward past our planet. But we want to be more focused on, making sure that we can be, inclusive and be ethical and be, whatever those norms are, that we can move forward in a way that is best for all of humanity, and maybe not make those same mistakes over and over and over again that we make here on Earth.
Yeah, I definitely agree that having those strict regulations and guidelines is really important as we progress and rapidly are moving forward. Because honestly, I feel like every day I open Twitter or the news, I'm always seeing something new discovery or a new thing. So being able to, keep progressing, but also remember to, stay on track with what we want to do without misusing anything is really important. And I know I said that was the last question, but I actually am really, really curious to learn, what advice would you give yourself or any other young children 10 years ago of yourself, or young people today about people who want to get into the STEM industry? And sometimes, like, if you could tell yourself something from 10 years, like yourself 10 years ago, what would it be?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked, because there's so many things that I wish I could tell myself. One, don't worry so much about grades. I feel like grades are one of those things that so many students are like hammered that your grades aren't good enough or whatever. I was never a straight A student, and that's okay, because grades are just a stepping stone to get you into, an actual working environment where you can prove yourself. I don't ever tell anybody my grades now. I don't know any of my colleagues' grades. It's just not important once you get out of school. They're important only when you're in school. So I
Yeah.
focused way too much on grades, and I probably should have focused much more on taking risks, because I felt like I needed to raise my hand and ask permission and wait for somebody to invite me to do something. What I really should have been doing is being more proactive and taking more risks with what I was doing, and focusing more on the stuff that interests me, less on what teachers assigned me, and more on what I truly wanted to do with my life, which was, I never got a chance to take an astronomy class until college. So I wish I had learned much more of that kind of stuff when I was younger and got more of a head start. Not that I couldn't catch up when I was in college, because I did,
Yeah.
but that's the kind of stuff I wish I'd focused more on, is the stuff that was truly valuable to me and what I wanted to do. And another thing is making sure I know that I belong, because in so many subtle ways, women or people of color or minorities are told that they don't belong in certain spaces. And I've felt that, and I've been told that directly, especially as I got out of school and into the working world, believe it or not, is when I was more told that than when I was a student. And so in so many different ways, you have to be kind of blind or deaf to the people who are telling you things that are negative about your path, because it's your path and only you know your path, and nobody else can truly tell you which way you should go. It always is determined by what's in your heart and what your mind is telling you is the right way to go, and it'll change. Your path evolves, but it's not up to somebody else to say that this isn't your path and this is. It's up to you to know that. So for me, I wish I'd been more resolved in knowing that I was comfortable with the path that I was taking, and I shouldn't be so dissuaded by people who were telling me that I didn't belong in one place or another, because I absolutely did, and here I am, and you can too.
Yeah, I think those are like perfect words, like you belong. I think it's really important for every single person, including myself, to always remember, regardless of the hardships or, the grades that we get, to always remember deep down our passion, and that, we can just keep going and keep following what we want to do. And honestly, every single one of us are human. We all can do what we want. We all are, we can follow our dreams and our passion. I think that's a wonderful way to end this interview. Thank you. I wish I could talk to you all day. Honestly, this was such an
Well,
interesting
let me
conversation.
just add one last thing: is it's okay to fail. Persistence is key. You can fail, it's okay. I've failed plenty. Just to be persistent, keep on going.
Yeah, to be persistent and to keep going is like an important thing. I hear it all the time from everyone. I think it's just really hard to implement it to your own life, but just always remembering those words behind you, like, okay, it's fine, keep going, keep pushing yourself is really important. And hearing your journey and hearing the different paths you took and the different types of parts of the space sector you took is just so interesting and fascinating to hear, because I'm not trying to go into conventional way into the space industry either. I kind of want to study more into space medicine, and I feel like that's something that's gaining more popularity, but not something that is very conventional about like just going into engineering. So I'm really excited to, I was excited to hear about your journey and how you were able to do it. So thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed the interview, and I definitely gained a whole new perspective and story. So thank you for that.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Bye.
Hi, thank you. You have a great rest of your day.
You too.